And you're going to see evidence of this. This is what the prosecutor is saying the evidence is going to show, Ted.
It's going to be a fascinating but very difficult trial to watch on many levels. Kelly Craft, thank you. We'll let you get a little lunch before the afternoon session begins there in Texas. Let's talk about it. In Statesboro, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Frances Johnson is here. Hello, Frances. And in studio, Kelly Hyman. She is the host of Once Upon a Time, the podcast, and a criminal defense attorney. Kelly, to you first. The details of this are very hard to take, and I know a lot of our viewers were listening to this description from this prosecutor who's the DA of this county, and it's tough listening to these allegations of a Border Patrol agent literally stabbing to death an 18-year-old little boy who was frightened, as he said, because he just watched his mother stabbed 27 times. What's your take on this one?
Right, as the Border Patrol, they're supposed to protect and they're supposed to serve our country and help people. So the idea that someone would do something like this is horrific. But we also have to remember that no one is above the law in our country. But the prosecutor has to prove every single element of the cause of action, and they told a very, very compelling story.
On the flip side, Frances, the defense seemed to be maybe throwing in the towel on the guilt phase and really hoping and setting the jury up for the penalty phase. A couple references to this was a good man before this incident took place, and then also having them keep in mind you can find him guilty and he'll never see the light of day. Planting that seed early on.
Yeah, when you have a case that has a fact pattern like this, with very few redeeming qualities at all, there's one job for this defense team, and that is to try to save the defendant's life when the death penalty is being considered. And it really should be. This is horrific and beyond any sense. Remember why this happens in the first place, because she's asking for support for this child, and he wants to not keep this wants to keep this child from being disclosed to the public and to his wife. This is just horrible all around, and the defense has a really tough job.
Yeah, when you have jurors doing the sign of the cross, sitting there listening to the prosecutor talk about the death of this little boy, and you've got jurors over there doing this, not a good sign. Let's be honest on that one. We'll see how it goes. We'll pick up more testimony as soon as they're back at it in Texas. The sister of the victim still on the stand. We'll watch that together when it begins. Quick programming note before we go to break tonight on Closing Arguments. Vinnie Politan will speak one-on-one with Harmony Montgomery's mother, and he's going to get some reaction to that heartbreaking affidavit released last week. Yeah, this has been a tough little run here on Court TV with these horrible cases involving children. 8 p.m. Eastern, Vinny will talk to Harmony's mother. Coming up, we'll take you live to Florida, where closing arguments are back underway in the Scot Peterson trial. Our Julia Janae is there. She'll join us live next. The fate of this man will be in the hands of the jury by the end of the day. Back with more. Stay with us.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, Harmony Montgomery's mother, Crystal Sorey, joins us live. The young girl who disappeared while in the care of her father and now accused killer Adam Montgomery. You'll get her firsthand account of this unthinkable tragedy and the approaching trial of Harmony's father. Plus, an in-depth look at how the system failed to protect Harmony leading up to her disappearance.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Let's turn our attention to Florida, where the fate of former Parkland school resource officer Scot Peterson will soon be in the hands of a Florida jury. Right now, the state is getting set to deliver its rebuttal closing argument. After that, the jury will get the case and decide if Peterson is guilty or not of child neglect and culpable negligence for taking cover instead of confronting Parkland school shooter Nicholas Cruz. Joining us now, Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae. She's in Fort Lauderdale outside the courthouse. And Julia, some passionate closings today from both sides. Talk about what stood out to you.
That's right, Ted. Passion, energy inside of this courtroom, the same courtroom where the Parkland school shooter, his penalty phase was held, where the jury ultimately spared his life. But inside of that courtroom, we heard from the state about an hour of their closing argument. They had 2 hours to fill, and they chose to only go an hour. So we know we're going to hear a bulk of it in this rebuttal case. But Assistant State Attorney Kristen Gomez really giving a fiery delivery to this jury about Scot Peterson, saying that he didn't do what he should have done, that he had a duty to go inside. Let's take a listen to some of those moments where she addressed this jury of 6.
At 2:23 p.m., when that deputy had been presented with a choice. At 2:23 p.m., Scot Peterson would arrive at the doors of the 1200 building, knowing at a very minimum that there was something wrong inside that building. Knowing at a very minimum that there were the sounds of firecrackers or a suspicious sound. And then while standing at those doors, less than 10 feet from the doors, according to his own words, he would hear gunshots. And he would get on the radio and he would announce, "Shots fired, 1200 building." And in that moment, while he stood at those doors, every student and every teacher on the 3rd floor was still alive. In that moment, choose to go in or choose to run. And Scot Peterson chose to run. When the defendant ran, he left behind an unrestricted killer to spend the next 4 minutes and 15 seconds wandering the halls at his leisure.
I noticed several jurors taking notes, especially when the prosecutor was noting those time codes, those time stamps of when this massacre was happening and what the defendant was doing at that time. Also noticed Scot Peterson at the defense table shaking his head during this. He's got a clear line of sight to these jurors so they can see him even when they're looking at the prosecutor doing those closing arguments. He's making sure they know he does not agree with what they are saying. There was an important acknowledgement that I think the state did in their closing as well when it comes to whether or not they wanted this defendant to simply risk his life. Take a listen.
The state did not expect Scot Peterson to go on a suicide mission. Members of the jury, we want our law enforcement officers going home at the end of their shift. I did not expect Scot Peterson to blindly run into the line of fire. I understand that officers came in here and told you that risking their lives is part of their job. Sergeant Heinrich ran towards the sounds of gunshots because, quote, "that's what we do." Detective Danny Polo ran in with his pistol telling us, quote, "you have to put yourself in a different headspace. This is it. You're possibly getting shot. No one wants to do it. It's what we're paid to do." Lieutenant Cardinelli ran past officers who told him to stay back because the defendant ordered them to. Because in his words, quote, "I said," and kept running.
Listening to all of this from the gallery inside of this courtroom, family members who we've seen throughout the course of this case. And I'm not just talking about the Parkland shooter case or Scot Peterson's case, but the entirety of all of the accountability that's been called for. I will point out, though, that many of the people, this is actually from a while ago, but it's a similar scene today inside of the courtroom where we have a lot of family members who are here supporting the prosecution, but their family members aren't listed in the indictment. Those who were killed on the 3rd floor of building 1200 are the ones who are listed in the indictment along with those injured. But many of the family members that we see here are those who were killed before Peterson arrived. But Ted, we're seeing that solidarity that we always have with those who have been impacted by what happened on February 14, 2018.
Yeah, a very tight-knit group that sadly came together in this tragedy. What about the defense? I know they went a little long.
Went a little long. The judge gave some leeway, but still ended up running out of time. Backing up to before they started their closing arguments, there was a motion on the table from the state saying that they didn't want them to get into any politics, any mention of the sheriff, Scott Israel, who was the sheriff at the time, who would have been Scot Peterson's boss. The that witness was never called. So the state said that the defense can't get into it, can't get into this idea that he was sacrificed as a sacrificial lamb by the department. But Mark Eiglarsh did begin part of his closing argument with saying that the defendant, his client, was a scapegoat. He didn't say who scapegoated him, and the prosecution tried to object, but the judge said the general statement could stand that he was a scapegoat, but didn't specifically name the sheriff. But take a listen to some of those comments during the closing arguments.
If Scott knew from Andrew Medina that there was a person who Andrew Medina knew as Nicholas Cruz, they knew his history, they knew him, that crazy Cruz, they knew him. If Andrew Medina said, yeah, I saw that guy, he's wearing a burgundy ROTC shirt, black pants, he had the description. Remember, he gave that description to Burton when Officer Burton shows up at the scene. Medina knew it. He doesn't tell Scott. This case is done with if Medina tells him, by the way, he's inside the 1200 building, and I saw him with a bag, and I heard shots right thereafter.
That passion meter was throughout the 2 hours of the defense's closing argument. That's the time that was allotted to them by the judge. But Eiglarsh was very passionate, energetic, dynamic in front of these jurors. But he spent a lot of time going through the prosecution's witnesses and his own witnesses. He had pictures up for each one and pointed out what they said. And he also showed this photo, reminding jurors that this is who caused this massacre. Not Scot Peterson, but in fact the shooter who created that deadly chaos on that day so many years ago. But Ted, as you mentioned, he did run out of time in terms of what he wanted to get to. I was concerned once we got to about the 30-minute mark left in the 2 hours that was allotted that we hadn't talked a lot about the law, hadn't heard about the case elements for the charges that this defendant is facing. And by the time he got to the end, he actually had not gotten to jury instructions, case elements. So when the jury left, he asked the judge for more time to get into those things. Here's what Judge Martin Fine had to say.
Mr. Eiglarsh, I'll let you proffer whatever you want, but quite candidly, I think the case law says in making these types of determinations, I'm supposed to determine whether I thought you used your time wisely or not. So
okay,
I'm not inclined to give you any more time.
Judge, I didn't get a chance to pull up, which I have here, the jury instructions and go through.
So that was, you knew how much time you had, sir. You used every minute of the 2 hours, plus I gave you some additional time because of the technical difficulties, how you chose to use your allotted time. That's in your purview, sir, but just because you didn't use it in an efficient manner, I guess now doesn't require me to give you more time, and I'm not going to give you more time.
Okay, so I'll need at some point access to the records now to say...
No, it's not now, sir. I need to send everyone a record. It will probably be after the jury's instructed and the jury's deliberating. I'll give you access to the records. You can proffer whatever you like. Okay? Anything else?
Does the court want to hear first what it is in terms of making the court's decision?
Mr. Eiglarsh, I just listened to you for 2 hours, and you didn't talk about the elements of the case. You've asked the jury to make a decision that they're not even going to be asked to make. Just my opinion, sir, but I'm supposed to decide whether you used your time wisely or not. I feel that you did not. So, no, sir, I'm not going to.
Okay,
not at this point.
Tough ruling from the judge. Ted, we know the defense doesn't get another chance to go in front of this jury. It is now the prosecution that is going to go, and I can guarantee they're already starting up there inside of the courtroom. They're going to spend a lot of time going through these case elements and the law.
Yeah, and the jury will have nothing to counter that. With Julia Janae, thank you. We'll let you get back into the courtroom as the proceedings continue, and at some point we'll be in a verdict watch because this jury will be deliberating the fate of Scot Peterson. Francis Johnson and Kelly Hyman still with us. Francis, to you on this one first. What do you think about the judge cutting off Eiglarsh? I get it, but seems, as Kelly was just saying, appealable.
I tell you, this is a defense attorney's worst nightmare, and that is to lose track of time in your closing and not be able to talk to that jury about the jury instructions they're going to be required to go through and render a decision about the facts. I think the judge's ruling may be appealable, but is within the sound discretion of the court. The defense attorney fumbled this poorly.
Kelly, your thoughts on not only that, but then the case overall. This school resource officer now facing the possibility of going to prison for his poor job performance.
As a Floridian and someone who has family members that are teachers, there's a lot of passion on both sides of this in Florida, a lot of strong opinions on, sadly, that we experienced this shooting in Florida. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the jury based on the facts and evidence of what they believe is the correct outcome. But going back to passion, absolutely really strong feelings and passion on both sides, from the state arguing the case and the defense attorney. Very good arguments. But ultimately, it'll be up to the jury to make that determination. In regards to the defense and not talking about the elements, was that a strategic decision by defense counsel not to do it to potentially get more time? Or was he so passionate about his arguments that he did, in fact, run out of time? And if he does, in fact, it is a verdict for the state. Will he appeal that issue, saying that he didn't have enough time to make arguments and lay it out in front of the jury?
Yeah, we'll find out eventually, depending on how this goes. But what we do know is that closings will conclude over the next hour, and then it will be time for this jury to take the case. We'll get a break in here still ahead. If you haven't seen this video, it's something else. Remember this guy, Mr. Hare, Mr. Zeiler? He was convicted and recommended to be sent to death row. Well, today he was back in court, and boy, he did something you got to see right after this.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, Harmony Montgomery's mother, Crystal Sorey, joins us live. The young girl who disappeared while in the care of her father and now accused killer Adam Montgomery. You'll get her firsthand account of this unthinkable tragedy and the approaching trial of Harmony's father. Plus, an in-depth look at how the system failed to protect Harmony leading up to her disappearance.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. We're waiting for the Texas jury to be back after the lunch break. Meanwhile, we're following some developments out of Florida in a case of convicted double murderer Joseph Zeiler. You'll remember him. This guy, he was convicted last month in the 1990 murders of 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter Lisa Story. He was in court today ahead of a sentencing hearing. And take a look at what happened. Oh, wow. Zeiler had that plan. He said, hey, I got a little secret. Come over here. I got to tell you something. And then let his defense attorney, Kevin Shirley, have the old elbow. He, of course, was taken down by a couple bailiffs right away. The hearing went on as planned this morning after break. Zeiler was back and shackled at the wrists. And we can report right now that his sentencing hearing has just finished up, and guess what? The judge sentenced him to death. So that puts a bow on that one. All right, let's go back to Texas now, where our cameras are this morning for the mistress and child murder trial. The defendant in this one, Ronald Burgos-Aviles, is facing the death penalty in the stabbing deaths of his ex-girlfriend and 20-month-old son that they shared together. Stabbed his son, allegedly. Let's go back into court now where we picked up. They're still on the lunch break there, but before we left our coverage, we were listening to testimony from the victim's sister. And she's very emotional because, of course, she lost her sister who was stabbed 27 times. Let's watch.
Of course. So from me, it says, I'm sleeping low. From me, again, it says, what's up? I believe prior to this, she was texting me, and that was my reply to her. Following, it says, from her to me, I was going to ask for a huge favor. My response, sup.
Over here on the left of this document, the outgoing income.
Yes.
So these are text messages to you, to her phone, correct?
Yes.
So what we're seeing is from her phone?
Yes, to and from me to her, from her to me. Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I respond, sup, and she
What does
texts.
that mean, sup?
It means like, what's up, what's going on, what do you need? And then she goes on to respond, Dom's dad wants to meet him, so I wanted to borrow your car so I won't be having trouble with the truck, referring to my mom's truck. I respond, she keeps on and she says, in like an hour. This is 3:25, 3:43. Like in an hour or less. And then my response to her was, okay. Why and where are you meeting? Is my continued response. So she replies, so I can borrow it, asking again. My reply to her is it in a public place? She replies, yes. Oh no, my reply is yes to when she asks, so can I borrow it? My reply is yes to her. And then she responds, at a park by Winfield, public place, so he can play. He referring to Dominic. She responds, I'm freaking out. Laugh out loud. I'm going to take a shower real quick, text you once I'm out. I don't think, my response to her, I don't think it's a good idea. And it looks like there were some emojis next to it, those little black squares. And then, but I put, but yes, you can borrow it.
Hold on there. So why are you saying it's not a good idea?
Well, because they just had a huge argument prior to this, after February when she submitted her documents for child support. And from her words to me was that he was very upset. He was very angry. He didn't want to speak to her again. He said he was never going to go through with it. He blocked her from social media, from her account, from her phone, everything. And then all of a sudden, that's why I'm asking her, is this a good idea? Because all of a sudden he wants to meet her. He wants to meet her. I didn't know it was a park until she tells me in the text it was a park. But I wanted it to be a public place. I'm thinking, maybe they're going to start arguing. So I want to make sure it's somewhere public where if she needs help, there's people watching that can help.
Okay, so you're concerned about her safety?
Yes.
Then what do you go on to say here?
That's exactly what I was sharing right now. Why does he want him to meet him now after so long? And he's going to try to convince you of doing otherwise, referring to the child support case that he was so upset about and he didn't want to, go forward with it. And she replies, he can't convince me. I need that money for Dominic. He already accepted he's going to pay child support. And now he's like, okay, fine. I want to see him. He's my son. Oh, this is him talking. I want to see him. He's my son. And I want to see him. So I don't know if he feels guilty or like, well, it's all there, so might as well, or what. I'll tell you the whole story later. This is just part of it. I respond, okay. And she responds, he's not getting off of child support.
That's on the 25th, right?
That's correct.
And she's pretty insistent in saying that.
All right, we need a break. We'll get you back into the courtroom for more of this testimony from the sister who didn't think it was a good idea that her sister goes and meets the defendant. Break, back after this. Welcome back. Let's get you back into the courtroom now for more testimony in the Ronald Burgos-Aviles trial out of Laredo, Texas. This is before the lunch break. It is the sister of the victim, Griselda Hernandez. Let's watch.
I can still hear him moaning and just being uncomfortable. So at this point, I tell her, you know what? And I can hear him saying owie to her still, owie, owie, mama, owie. So I tell her, bring Dominic to the room, let me check him. So I grab him from her arms and I lay him down right on my bed. And I start checking him from head to toe. My mom, whenever my children, or when I'm the oldest from my brothers and sisters, whenever something was wrong with us, she'd always, lay us down and check us to make sure nothing was wrong with us. So I do the same thing. I start taking off his clothes pieces one by one, and when I pull down his little shorts, he wears a diaper at this time. He's a year and a half, so he wears a diaper. I pull down his shorts, and then when I go to pull him down, his legs look normal to me at first sight, and then I flip him this way to see his right thigh. It looks okay. His leg looks okay. But when I flip him on his right side, that I see his left leg, I see a dot of blood on his thigh, right on his vastus lateralis, right on his thigh, where you would get like a shot when the babies get shots from the doctors. So as I'm checking him, I'm talking to my sister right next to me, and I'm asking her, have you taken him in for shots lately? Because I noticed that as soon as I moved him and I went to check his leg, he starts, owie, owie, like now he's crying. Now he's not just saying owie, now he's crying. So I'm telling her, when did you take him for shots? And she's like, I just see her eyes like wide open. She's like, I haven't taken him for shots. I haven't taken him. He hasn't gotten any shots.
Let me stop you right there. You say her eyes get wide open. What is her demeanor, if any, at this moment? How is she acting?
I just feel at that moment when I ask her, she just goes into straight panic, because then she starts telling me like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? And I just tell her, hold on, let me check. And like, I'm trying to calm her down because she's screaming, she's frantic, she's just freaked out. And I'm checking Dominic, and when I go to wipe the area with my hand where he had the blood on it, the little scab, whatever had formed, it wipes off, and then we start seeing black, like his blood was not red, it was like very dark, like a brown, blackish color.
Let me ask you though, is she crying?
At this point, she's already crying and screaming, and my kids can hear her in the cell, and they all kind of rush in the room, and I tell her to calm down. I actually scream at her and tell her, like, calm down, you're scaring the baby, because the baby's crying, she's crying, and she's hysterical next to me, asking me what's wrong with him. I don't know what's wrong with him. I'm checking him.
Okay, so let me just take a question and answer. So you're a registered nurse, right?
Yes.
Okay, you have training.
Yes.
Right? Here you have a baby presented with a wound or some injury, correct?
Yes.
What is the first thing you do as far as trying to find out what happened?
So my first thought was a shot, because like I said, the side of his leg, this muscle right here is where we put shots when you put shot in a baby. So that's why I'm thinking that. But when she says no, that I see the blood coming out, I'm thinking maybe an insect bite. And, I've asked myself after that question, why didn't I think like a bee, a hornet, something that stung him? Because I've gone stung by bees and hornets and no black blood comes out of it. So what I'm thinking is, if black blood or dark blood is coming out, there's something poisonous in there, like something is reacting with his blood. So when I go to squish it out and I'm telling her to calm down at the same time, it just keeps flowing. And I keep wiping it off at this time with the cloth, and it just keeps coming out. And she's freaking out because what she's seeing. And I'm trying to stay composed, but I'm here that he doesn't have a shot, and I'm thinking maybe something bit him at the park.
Okay,
but
if you can just slow down a little bit. But what, if any, information did you find out? How and where would Dominic be bitten by an insect?
So I asked her if, what happened at the park while I'm checking him. Did the baby fall? Did you notice anything bite him? Did you not leave him unattended for a while? Did you leave him alone with his dad for any amount of time that you maybe didn't see? And I feel that's why she went into panic mode, because she did leave him alone with his father for momentarily, I don't know how long. She tells me that she went to the car to get the sippy cup and some snacks that she had for him, and on her way back, Dominic's father is facing the park and he is holding the Dominic on a bench, and I imagine he was holding him like this because that's what she modeled to me when she was showing me. And she hears his dad speaking to him about him being present in his life because he doesn't want Dominic to go through what he went through when he was small, that he was raised by his grandmother, and he's going to be there for Dominic, and you know, he's going to be present in his life. So my sister tells me that she took a while to get to him to allow them to have that, you know, moment.
The bond.
Yes. And when she starts walking a little faster because she starts hearing Dominic kind of cry or I don't know, be uneasy. But that was the only time she left him alone that she wasn't watching.
Okay. So the visit with his father was short then?
She cut the visit short because after that he wouldn't stop crying. He was just uneasy.
Now, so your nephew presents himself. He's got this you describe as a brown or dark, like a black blood coming out of this wound. What, if anything, do you do next?
I tell her that we have to take him to the ER immediately. Because one, she just told me the baby didn't get any injection. So if this thing that he has is, he didn't have it before and he just got it now, and he's in pain, and you know, it's not blood where he cut himself, that blood's coming out. I tell her, you know what, we need to go and we need to go now. So I leave my children at home. I leave with her to the ER, and we get there, they check him out. Before we leave, I took pictures of his leg, of the blood that was coming out. Okay. I just never seen that before. I just felt it was important for us to take the pictures because I don't know when we get to the ER if it's still going to be bleeding or not, but I wanted them to see what it was like when I found it.
Okay, that is near the end of her testimony before the lunch break. Kelly Hyman still with us. Pretty good witness, huh? This sister, Kelly.
Yes, very compelling. She comes across as someone very careable, someone very credible, someone that has a lot of compassion, and I could see her being very trustworthy and absolutely very, very believable. And she tells such a compelling story. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, just the being at the park, and you know, she has a lot of love for her sister, who is now gone, and her sister's child. So we're going to get a break here, top of the hour, and when we come back, Judge Ashley Wilcott is going to be picking up our coverage. Judge, good to see you on this busy Monday.
Always good to see you, Ted. What a busy Monday. We know that we have a verdict watch. We also have more of this trial that we're going to bring you live from Laredo, Texas. Stay tuned here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice, always bringing you the best of the trials nationwide.